Welcome to the show, man. I'm really excited about this one. How you doing?
Doing good, Andrew. It's good to be here.
What do you think? What do you think of my hat? I thought maybe I'd make you feel a bit more at home.
I love it. I feel comfortable.
You feel comfortable?
I do. In fact, I'm heading to the Congo soon, and I reckon that'll work.
You want to borrow it?
Or might get me in jail, but
Do you think maybe?
might not find me either.
I think maybe I could, like tag along with you and look badass in the bush.
We'll see. I mean, we're gonna have to add a few more things: a couple of boots, maybe a big knife, gun.
Do I need to put a comb in my long sock?
That's a prerequisite. Yes, it is.
a prerequisite.
Yes.
And just for the beard.
Two-tone shirt, khaki, blue and khaki. That's it. Buddha style. That's how I roll. Hashtag not.
On a serious note, man, welcome to the show. It's awesome to have you here. I know you're an incredibly busy guy. You travel all over the world as a professional game ranger. You're hands down one of my favorite wildlife photographers in the world.
Thanks, Andrew.
Your Instagram following speaks for it itself. And to me, you're more of a modern day sort of Indiana Jones, if you want to call it. Except obviously you don't get to go in the tombs and fight the enemy with the whip and all that. But the adventures that you've been on around the world. I mean, I can't wait to tell some of the stories here today. I think we've got some great content that we're gonna talk about.
Yeah, I love what I get to do, Andrew, and I think that indie thing has come up a few times. People mentioning it and labeling me as such, and I think it's just an exciting life. Getting to travel not only locally and throughout Africa, but more recently over the last 2 or 3 years internationally, and seeing radical places. As you say on Instagram, people follow along and hopefully not get shot at by people just quite yet. Don't have a whip. Maybe I do.
Look, I've seen a lot of game rangers in my time, and I mean no disrespect to the guys and girls out there, but you've got a very marketable kind of look, and I think that helps you in your business quite a bit. When you're out there, you've got the rifle, you've got the camera around your back. I think you've definitely got that whole Indiana Jones vibe going on, which I think attracts people from a tourist point of view, to want to tour with you and travel the world and go and see exactly what it is you've got to show them.
I think so. I think it's important, especially with social media. And as much as I'm in the business of traveling and taking guests on safari, I'm also in the business of trying to sell these experiences. So I think that the look and the way you present yourself is an important aspect. I mean, you deal a lot with social, and you're very clever about that. And I think if anyone understands it, it's yourself. You got to be a marketable product in a sense. That's what we're selling at the end of the day.
You just got back from Brazil, and I know Brazil's one of the countries that is very fresh on your roster of events that you offer to clients. Pantanal specifically. Tell us a bit about Pantanal.
Oh, it's epic. If you can imagine the Amazon, so the Pantanal essentially is the Amazon's wetland. It's where a lot of the water floods into. It floods up to 80% of that landmass floods during the summertime, which is huge. You can imagine an area that now, when I visited, it's dry season, but 80% land visible, and it's completely swaps around in summer. There's so much water, and you're 300 kilometers from the actual Amazon where we were, and just a wild experience. Absolutely crazy.
Apart from the obvious, well-known Jaguar that lives in the area, Parrot.
Yeah.
You call him Parrot, right?
Pirata is his local name, yeah. Pirates.
Pirate.
One-eyed Jaguar.
Tell me, what other big, large animals are there to take photos of, go visit, go see?
Yeah, so there's quite a few things there. We on the last trip we had 18 different mammal species. For what it's worth, just to give you an idea of how many you do get to see. But some of the bigger ones would be stuff like giant anteaters, which is this mother of a anteater. You think of it as maybe a pangolin or something smaller, but it's about the length of a man, like 2 meters long. When it stands up on its legs and actually raises its hair, it goes about probably waist height. It's a big animal. The claws. I just heard a story. How wacky is this? A researcher that they caught one for research purposes. I think they tried to put a tag on it to follow it, to track its movements. And so they tranquilized this animal. In the process of pinning it down, it wasn't fully sedated. And it ended up hooking over the claw, which is about the length of, if you can imagine, almost your whole hand. So it's about a 10 centimeter claw, the main digging appendage. And it got her by her belly and ripped her up all the way to the back of her head, one big gash. And she almost died, right? So there was a plane on site that took her to hospital. And if it wasn't for that, she would have been gone. So you think of it as just an anteater, but this thing has the ability to do serious damage.
That's a crazy story. I mean,
Yeah.
You tell me that you see things like anteaters, and immediately I'm thinking about questions of, but aren't they susceptible to attacks by, say, crocodiles or jaguars or things like that? But it seems even animals like that have a built-in safety mechanism.
You won't believe it. Their forearm is as thick as my thigh for digging. So they dig through, if you can imagine how hard a termite mine, it's like cement or concrete. And they're able to dig right through that and get to ants and termites. So very strong. We saw tapir, which is this crazy hippo rhino-like thing. I don't know. It quite water-bound. They'll often sit in water, only the nose sticking out. So have a look at it online. It looks like it's got a trunk as a nose. Crazy animal. They got Caiman, which is like our crocodile, a little bit smaller, maybe 2.5 meters long. Capybara, which is the largest rodent in the world. Also a very cool-looking animal. Probably weigh up to like 40 kilos. So it's a pretty big animal. And there's a whole host of other animals. The birds there are pretty sick. 2,000 species of birds. I think in South Africa we got less than 800.
They got parrots.
Parrots, parakeets, macaws. If you think of the movie Rio, which everyone knows, inspired by macaws in Brazil. Sadly, of which the bird that inspired it is now extinct in the wild, which sucks.
There are a lot of people that go and capture them or steal the eggs.
Yeah.
Is that how the pet trade sort of works over there?
A lot of it in Brazil, right? So it's quite an exotic place. If you think of the Pantanal, you see on safari where I just went now, you see iguanas, you see anacondas, you see red-tailed boas. So all these animals that you expect to see in a pet shop or these animal trade industries, you get them there. And the worst streak that I know of is the 80s and 90s, 10,000 hyacinth macaws, which is these really beautiful hyacinth-colored macaws were taken out of the wild alone. So numbers plummeted, but I think Brazil, the exciting thing about it and why I love it so much is it's on the up. So it's busy getting better and better. Tourism's starting to kick off, and so a lot of these birds are now peaking or coming back into good numbers again.
What are the laws with respect to guys going in there and stealing eggs and obviously, hoping to breed them for pet shops?
But Brazil's a crazy country. It's still very much it's developing. It's got a crazy economy, and much like in South Africa, if you think of rhinos, there's laws in place, there's penalties, and people still do it. And it's much the same there. There's laws against it. You can't hunt or shoot a jaguar, but farmers still kill them because they eat livestock. So same with the birds. It is a thriving industry. Unfortunately, there's not that much you can do about it. But I think through time it'll get better and better. But it is pretty crazy.
Do you think people that steal animals like that for pet trade, do you think that they're doing it more because they're obviously poverty stricken and they need to make a living, feed their families, or do you think it's more the upper end of the guys that are making quite a bit of money out of it? And they're going in there and sort of stealing all these animals. What do you think?
I think it starts as both. So it probably starts poverty-like, people doing it just to get extra cash, but it turns into a lucrative industry. And so then professionals getting involved, it becomes quite a big thing, getting these birds out, money-making. I mean, for some of these macaws, you can pay upwards of $50,000, $60,000 for a bird, which is crazy. Like if you think about, you need 10 of those and you're on your way to $1 million. So quite a lot of money in that. And I think probably the craziest animal that they have in Brazil is the black panther or the black jaguar. And they're there. So just in short, how crazy Brazil is. My local guide, Ricardo, he's an extraordinary person. He's been in the Pantanal for a long time, been guiding there for a long time. He ended up going to the Amazon. He got reports or heard reports of sightings, regular sightings of black panthers in the Amazon. Okay, so again, Amazon, crazy place, tribes, just this wacky place. And long story short, he ended up spending 10 days on this farm. The day he arrived, right, the owner of the farm gave him a pistol. So he got onto site in the Amazon on this farm. Owner says he has a pistol, he has bullets. And he says, no. I'm well acquainted. I can deal with animals. I don't need this. He says, buddy, this is not for the animals. This is for your protection. And so he chuckles and he takes it. And the next 10 days, he got death threats. The farmer was against logging of trees and destroying the Amazon, and he didn't allow it on his farm. And there's such bad people in that place, so many bad people logging and getting into that industry, and they wanted to kill the farmer. And the very next day, the second day, the farmer disappeared, left him for dead, just vanished off of the farm. So Ricardo stayed on, set on camera traps, and on the 10th day, somebody actually came to kill the farmer, the owner of the land. They arrived at the house. Somebody was walking outside the house. He heard a bike stop just outside the house. Somebody walking in on the wooden porch. Ricardo sitting on his bed with this pistol. And eventually the guy leaving. And that next day, Ricardo was like, stuff this. This is not the kind of place I want to bring tourists to. And he hitchhiked his way out of there back to civilization. But that's Brazil, right? It's massive. It's almost 9,000 kilometers from one end to the other. I think probably more if you compare that to South Africa. So it's just this crazy country. But the wildlife is epic. Jaguars and everything else. So it's definitely a place that I'll be visiting more and more.
You talk about the Jaguars. The Jaguars was probably the main reason why you and your guests went to Pantanal.
Yeah.
But one specific Jaguar stands out. Pirata.
Yeah.
What's the significance of this Jaguar?
He must weigh, if you think of a leopard, people compare them to leopards. A leopard weighs, the biggest male leopard I think ever recorded was in the 90 kilos. So you're looking on average probably 70, 80 kilos, size of like a big dog, big bull or something like that. An animal like Pirata would probably weigh 130 kilos. So almost double that weight. The heaviest jaguar weighed 160 kilograms. So that's a massive animal. A lioness weighs less than 160 on average. So if you think of a male jaguar weighing the same as a lioness, just that alone is mind-blowing. And it's these animals like Pirata, this jaguar specializes in Caiman. So he actually, for a living, catches crocodiles. It's insane. That's his main prey.
You got to watch that, didn't you?
Yeah, like he just hunts them, he stalks them, no fear. Big one, small one. He doesn't select them. It's not like he avoids the bigger ones. He looks for them and he actively hunts them. And he's built this name for himself as the Caiman hunter or the Caiman specialist.
One of the things about him is he's got a disability. He's got one of his eyes is damaged. He's blind.
He's got a membrane, covering most of his eye.
You can still see the eye, but you say that there's no sight in that eye.
There's no sight. You can see about 10-15% of his eye. So he's a one-eyed hunter.
And you actually witnessed a moment where he was hunting and something was on his blind spot and he didn't see it.
He stepped on a Caiman, and he didn't. Luckily, the Caiman obviously probably still swimming away as we speak. I think he got a heart attack, but he stepped on one without seeing it. Obviously, that one half of his vision is obscured, and so he put his foot down on a small, like 1 meter Caiman, and tried to catch it, but it was too slow. The Caiman moved pretty quick.
So, given the size that he is, I mean, Caimans don't grow as big as crocs, or do they?
No, so you get different species of Caiman. One in the Amazon goes up, the black Caiman. This is the Jaguar Caiman. The black Caiman goes up to about 4.5 meters or so, and they've been known to kill people.
What do you think the weight-to-weight ratio is of Parrota versus the Caiman?
Probably the same, eh? Maybe the Caiman, a big Caiman, probably about the same, 160 to 200 kilos, maybe a little bit more. But it's also the size. It's a predator. They're explosive. They got a tail. I mean, the jaw, the strength, the pressure in that jaw alone. It's not like you're catching an antelope or you're catching another predator, and so that predator is able to defend itself. So that alone is pretty spectacular.
So did you actually see him? I know you saw him doing the hunt, but did you actually see him catch it?
Didn't see him. I saw a female catching a Caiman. So she jumped on one right in front of us. So she quite a big fight, a lot of commotion, tail whipping. Then she killed it. It took about 25 minutes for her to kill this thing. And they kill them largely. They got very, very powerful jaws, right? For its body size, it's got the strongest jaws of any cat in the world, okay? So compared to the size. And so they kill them usually by a puncture through the brain case into the brain, so through the skull. They basically bite through the skull into the brain, and that's how they typically kill a Caiman. And then she dragged it out on the beach, and a great photograph to accompany that. They are powerful animals, right? And then we almost died after that. We got attacked by killer bees.
I was going to mention that.
Yeah, that sucked. Not going to lie.
What happened?
Yeah, so she dragged this thing up on the hill. And if you've ever heard about killer bees, it's the same as our honeybee, but found across North and South America, but just like crazy numbers, big swarms of them. And we were off of the main river in a little bay and a small entry and exit channel for one boat only. There's about 10 boats around. So you view them, by the way, by boat, not on land. So all these Jaguar safaris are on a boat on the river, and you view them on land. And so we just finished. She just dragged it up on the side of the river. We congratulated each other, great photographs, awesome sighting. And next moment, a lady starts screaming on another boat, screaming on the top of her lungs and smacking the side of her face. And we looked over and I was confused. They were like, what the heck? It's so quiet on the river.
At first you think maybe she's got mozzies or, you know.
It was bizarre. And then as I look closer, I see a swarm of bees over her head. And so she had obviously been stung. And then somebody else on the boat starts screaming. And then the boat next door starts screaming, and boat engines firing up, and somebody shouting in Portuguese, or Brazilian Portuguese, shouting, "Killer bees." And then our boat driver and my guide were like, shit, get that, now leave. And the boat stopped. Oh, but with that, 10 boats start up, right? Everybody aiming for the same channel. So we get smashed by a boat on the side. Another boat ends up going into the reeds, spinning mud and water all over our boat, and bees, right? So I didn't get stung. I was quite lucky, but 2 of my guests got stung. The one got 8 stings and the other one 6. In the face, under the eye. I remember throwing my jacket at my guest to cover his head. And eventually we got out, but a friend of mine that was also on the river got over 20 stings. So he got a few bees in his shirt. Yeah, crazy, man, like killer bee. And they've killed people, you know. So it's every year people get killed by these things. So
obviously you do your homework with your guests, though, before you end up in a place like Brazil.
Yes.
I mean, you obviously understand all the dangers that are in the immediate area.
Yeah.
So if anyone says to you...
Even allergies, right?
So if anyone says to you, I want to go to Pantanal, Brazil, I want to go see the jaguars, but unfortunately I'm highly allergic to bees, you're probably going to say... Bring 6 EpiPens. Or rather consider going to Mana Pools or...
No way, man. No. They've got to come, you know, like it's wild. It's crazy experiences, you know, as long as they're prepared. So if you're allergic to a bee, bring stuff to help you out, you know. The odds of that happening again are not so good, but... I think that's what makes the safaris that we do and that I host so exciting, right? You got to feel a little bit alive. If you go somewhere safe, you can go to a reserve, go to Pilansberg, or go somewhere where it's comfortable and convenient. But I think when I take people out of their comfort zones and push them a little bit and make them feel hot, and like the mosquitoes, I promise you, I've never seen so many mosquitoes in my life. Every day, all day long, if that boat stopped, you'd get hammered by mosquitoes. So you're photographing these jaguars, and you've got mosquitoes all over your hands, you've got them in your face, in your ears, in your neck, and they're biting you the whole time. No amount of insect repellent seemed to work or do the job. And it's uncomfortable, it's 80% humidity, it's 40 degrees Celsius. But it's an experience, and I'll never forget that. Okay, so like taking people, when you push them a little bit, whether it's a bee attack or a charge by an elephant or whatever it is, it's that something that makes it real, that makes them feel alive.
It makes the experience even more worthwhile.
They never forget that, and that's what it's about.
You might hurt for a couple of minutes or a few hours, but
you might die,
but the memory will last forever.
Yeah, let's hope it doesn't happen. It hasn't happened yet.
Dude, I've actually got a video of a jaguar taking out a crocodile. I
think I know which one.
You got to see this, man.
Let's have a look. Oh yeah. So this is an epic video, right? This is exactly what it looks like. A lot of reeds, very pretty on the sides. They hunt through that, and when they spot Caiman, like it's not even a negotiable thing. They don't stalk. They get right in there and have a look at this now. Watch this.
Sneaking up slowly to the bank.
Look at those eyes. Caiman doesn't know a thing. Look how big that Caiman is.
The size of that thing.
Check. Boom.
That is mad.
See that, eh? Right on the back of the skull, so into the brain, done.
He knew exactly where to grab it.
Subdued. That thing's not into probably the nervous system shot. And he swims with it, right? So he swims with a 2.5, 3 meter Caiman into the water, and he swims with it across to the bank. Not standing, no land. It's a crazy animal, Andrew. I promise you. That thing is, it's a force to be reckoned with.
That's incredible. And what does he do? Just drag him on the land and eat him, or does he go and store him in a little hide, or
just onto land, under bush, some thickets or something like that, and that's his food for the next 2-3 days. Yeah, that's crazy. They're remarkable animals, and that's why I was so taken by them, man.
Let's go back to the beginning, man. You grew up in Palabora.
I did. Do you know where that is?
Kind of.
That's the response most people give me.
And your dad owned was it a safari company or a lodge? What was it?
No, so he owned a safari company. They did tours. He would drive and tour people into Kruger, some of the neighboring private reserves. You know, during those times, talking about the 80s and the 90s, there was places like Marlon, a handful. You know, it wasn't as big as what it is today. So, but a lot of time in Kruger, international guests. Yeah, and that's where a lot of my love and passion for today comes from.
What did you used to do? Tag along with Dad when he was game ranging?
Exactly. Yeah, my dad spent a lot of time away from home as well. He'd often do tours 16, 20 days at a time. Now and again, I'd skip school go with them, not for that long, obviously, but shorter trips and just about every weekend. So we'd either be in Kruger, or we had a lot of friends that owned game ranches and farms, and so we'd spend countless times or hours in the bush together with, it's just a part of being in a small town. You'd have hyenas coming through, looking through your bins, baboons raiding any kind of fruit tree or your home, and you can hear lions at night. And so it's a really cool wildlife town that you get to grow up in, very small.
Even at a young age, you got to experience probably most, if not all, of the South African wildlife in the Kruger and other parks.
Yeah, lions, leopards, you name it. It's something that I grew up with from very young.
Then when you got a bit older, you decided you wanted to head out of Palabora, experience a little bit more of life, and you ended up in Jeffreys Bay.
J-Bay, out of like all the places in South Africa. My brother somehow moved there. I can't remember exactly what got him there, but he'd been there for about a year or two. I went to visit, and I still remember going there and being blown away. I mean, it's growing up in Palabora. It's a shithole. There's nothing there. It's a mining town, okay, and then going from there to Jeffreys Bay, all of a sudden, like beach, surf, crazy place. And I saw a band play there. I fell in love with the band, local band, and then went back to Palabora, hated life. 6 months later, decided to move to J-Bay. Ended up in Jeffreys Bay.
And you ended up in a band?
In the same band, yeah. So I got there. I stayed there for about a year, became friends with the guys in the band. Eventually, their drummer left. I'd been playing drums for a few years at the time. And yeah, I joined them and started playing drums. So did odd jobs. I was young. I was like 19, 20. I didn't go to uni. I worked as a game ranger before we were leaving for Jeffreys for about 2 years. And my passion was the bush, wildlife, sharing that with people. That was the only thing that I could think about. And then I had a love for music.
Did you manage to catch any waves while you were in J-Bay?
I did. How can you not?
So you were a surfer boy, drummer, game ranger.
That's exactly to the T, the script. I used to surf. I mean, I wasn't the greatest, but growing up in Jeffreys Bay, or living in Jeffreys Bay for 5 years, definitely something you got to do is get out into the water, and it was a very cool experience, very fun part of my life.
The one thing I appreciate about your story, and when I look at where you are now in the business and how successful the business has become, and you as a public figure, getting to travel around the world, is you've come from very humble beginnings. And Jeffreys Bay, as much as it sounds like it was a bit of a jolt, it wasn't. It was hardship.
Yeah.
I mean, you slept in a garage with 2 other people.
Yeah.
And tell us a bit about the food struggle. I mean, there were times when you couldn't afford food, and you ended up at the local church where they were handing out sort of charity food. Things like that. Tell us a bit about that.
Look, man, it was tough, Andrew. I'm not going to lie. So, I mean, growing up, we had a reasonable, we went to a rich family, we went to a poor family. My parents worked hard. But then going to Jeffreys Bay, I was kind of on my own a little bit there. I had my brother to help me. I stayed with him for the most part. But, it's a time when, as a young guy, I was trying to find myself. I didn't have a car, so I wasn't left with a car. No cash, nothing like that. Had to graft, right? So I would do, during the daytime, I had a few jobs. One of them was working as a site manager, a construction site manager, just helping guys and I did DIY stuff, odds and ends. At night I waited, so I was a waiter 7 days a week. Sucked.
Basically anything that made money.
Just money, man, like hustling, just trying to get money to be able to, and most of that was to live and my dream in terms of this band, just being able to play and make, I was band besot. I loved it so much. But it was challenging, man. My brother and them also struggled. They weren't doing that well. So, like you said, we ended up getting somebody to open up their garage to us. We had a bed in there, a couple of things, bathroom, all like one square space. Luckily, it wasn't a single garage because that would have really sucked. But a double garage, everything in there. And it was challenging, man. Like you said, we got food from church. So they supported us a bit, gave us a pastel a week with like soy mints and all sorts of random things. At a stage, I remember going to Checkers and buying, I don't know if you still remember those chocolates you used to buy. As you walked in, there used to be all these assorted chocolates that you could pick up and then weigh, or we put them in a bowl. And so I used to go buy like a few of those, put them in the fridge, make them cold, and eat them slowly. So like that was enjoying a bit of sweetness throughout the week. And I'm not talking about like 10 or 12 years ago. But what it did do, I promise you, is motivate me, man. I went through job mails, any kind of advert I could find to get back into the bush business again, just to work as a guide. And like everyone shut doors, no experience, don't know who you are. Like And so I had no opportunity, but I knew like I just had to keep trying. And eventually the band luckily decided to move to the US. So I stayed there for 4 or 5 years. As you said, it was a lot of fun, but there was a lot of trying times. Taught me a lot. Almost ended up on the street. It wasn't too far away. Then we moved to the States. I had the only valuable thing I had on me was one drum kit. So like that's the only thing I basically owned, and a cricket bat. I loved playing cricket.
You only did 1 year in the States, though.
A year, though, yeah.
And did you manage to travel quite extensively around the
So
around
what
the
bought my
States?
ticket to the States, the only reason way I got there was my drum kit. I sold it for 15,000 Rand, and that bought my drum kit and gave me about 2,000 Rand extra that I had. And so that's how I moved to the States. Sold my drum kit, $2,000, which at that time was like $100, I think.
How much was the plane ticket back then?
About 12 or 13,000 Rand. And yeah, I moved to the States and then just jammed. And that was a blast, man. I was like 22, having the time of my life. We toured. We bought this old 1989 Dodge Ram van, red, maroon and white. Even the whole inside was maroon. It was so cool. V8 cost us all our band money that we made went into like getting to the gig and back. But it was a blast, man. Met people. We surfed on the coast there. We played. We stayed in Richmond, Virginia. We stayed in Florida, 2 different places. Yeah, it was a good time, man.
You're primarily based up on the West Coast.
Yes, East Coast. Sorry, yeah. So yeah, Virginia, Florida. Played in Washington. Played in the North Carolina, all those kind of places. And yeah, it was fun, man. We had a blast. And then, but the other guys were a bit older. So I was younger. The other guys were about 30. Both of them had kids. The other 2 guys in the band, wives, family back home, and it just got too hectic. We traveled a lot, and in the end, the band decided to call it quits. Come back to South Africa. They wanted to play here. I had no intentions of band life in South Africa, and so the bush was calling.
You came back. You ended up at Singita.
Yes.
Which is obviously one of the Lani the Laniest game lodge in SA.
That's it, like 30 grand per person per night kind of thing.
You spent 7 years there, man. That's a long time.
I did. It was good, you know. It's the kind of place, I think, as a guide, for those who don't know. So, as a ranger starting out, you start with a like on the bottom. You start at some crappy lodge. You have to clean your own vehicle. You have to pack your own cooler boxes. You have to look after the guests. Sometimes you got to cook for them. Okay, so like you really started with nothing, very little. Get treated like nothing. You get maybe 1,500 Rand, 2,000 Rand a month salary because you get tips and live-in costs. So you start with nothing.
You stuck it out for 7 years.
Well, that I did for a long time. Singita is different. So Singita, it's the kind of place where guides end up working for a longer time because they give you a better benefit. You can't. I mean, where do you go after that? There's nowhere else you can work other than places like that. So you know, the better benefits, better, longer lifestyle. So some of the guides, mates that I worked with then, are still working there now. So maybe like 12, 14 years that they've been working at this camp. So yeah, it was 7 years. It was a good time. Very, very exciting. A lot of fun. A lot of adventures.
And then in 2014, you actually started as an employee at the company you're now a partner and part owner of.
Yeah. So Wild Eye started in January 2014, left Singita a month before that. I love photography. So for those who follow me and hopefully check out what I do, I love wildlife photography. I love guiding. And Wild Eye, new company at the time. I had a few options, but I wanted to go somewhere new and fresh so I can get involved right from the beginning. I got to meet the guys 2 years before that, started hosting trips for them before I started, just as a tester and see what they're about. Yeah, and in the end, joined them in 2014. It really suited my vision and direction of where I wanted to go.
I mean, since then, look, I'm not sure how long Wild Eye has been going, but you've been with Wild Eye now for 4 years.
Yeah, so 4 going 5, yeah.
And there's already a branch in Kenya that deals with a lot of the clientele that come through for the Maasai Mara and a couple of other areas there.
We own a camp in the Maasai Mara. It's a seasonal camp, runs 5 months of the year, and got about 12 staff, permanent staff up there. We get staff in during the season as well. So, yeah, it's a decent operation that we have up there.
I was privileged enough to visit the Mara with my parents when I was a kid, and we stayed at Governor's Camp, which is almost like staying in a hotel, but you're in tents. I mean, literally, your tent looks like a hotel room. Exactly. That's how nice it was. Yeah, and we got charged by a couple of Ellies, and it was quite interesting. I mean, but we'll get into some of the experiences that you've had shortly. Let's get on to the crazy stories. What's probably one of the most memorable places you visited?
Man, Pantanal stands out for sure, just of recent trips.
Is it because it's just so different though? Because I mean, you're so accustomed to the South African environment.
No doubt.
For you to put yourself in a place like Pantanal, which is obviously more swamp based, more forest based. I mean, is that probably the reason why you're now enjoying all these international trips a bit more?
Yeah, I think also I'm in a privileged position where myself and my one business partner, Jerry, where we can kind of choose a place and go, and people will travel with us. So Patagonia is one that's come to mind. India I've been to. Pantanal I've had a fond love for Jaguars since I can remember, right? So I think it comes along as a place that I really want to go to. So there's some places where I've got like absolutely no interest in visiting, like Australia's wildlife, kangaroos and stuff like that. But Pantanal, Jaguars, the South American atmosphere, the Amazon, the people, the beef industry, like it's this cool place for a person to visit. There's rich culture, there's cowboys, there's horses. So it's just this cool experience that, I've got to make sure that where I visit is marketable as well, and people actually want to go and see these things. And the other place, and I think you share similar love for it, is India, that I really enjoyed visiting, mainly for tigers. But
India's incredible, man.
Culture.
I mean, it's hands down one of the best places I've ever visited.
It's a crazy place.
Crazy place.
The people, I love the people there. They were always happy, always welcoming. I think if you both of us are quite big, so if you're a bigger guy, a few tattoos, I got asked for I don't know how many selfies. Just random people coming up and wanting a selfie, and just nice people, it's a radical place to visit and to stay in.
I was traveling with a buddy of mine, Buck Skuman, in India, and we got to have a day away from work, and he knows the place really well because he spent a lot of time there. I'm talking primarily about Mumbai. And we got in a tuk-tuk and we drove around to all the different places. And we got to this one place that's quite a sightseeing place. I don't know, it's sort of like a Land's End, and then there's this massive bridge that connects two islands together. And we got out the tuk-tuk, and there was obviously quite a bit of interest already because I was walking around in a vest. I mean, I'm not the biggest guy, but I look a lot different to the local Indian guys.
Scary looking dude, I'm not going to lie.
And my buddy Bucks screams at the top of his voice, WWE superstar, and then bolts. And before I knew it, I had about 200 to 300 people swarming me with cameras. I mean, one selfie wasn't enough for each person, so I still got to get him back for that one. But it took me literally about 2 hours to get away from the crowd.
I believe that 110%, without a shadow of a doubt. That's a real story.
I mean, they're fanatical. Whenever there's a bodybuilding show in town, I mean, there's bodyguards everywhere for all the celebrities. They're absolutely fanatical. But at the same time, some of the most humble people and some of the most spiritual people I've ever met. I absolutely love India, and I'd love to go back one day.
Yeah, I mean, just in short, the wildlife experience there, one of the most famous parks, probably the most famous park, is Ranthambore, where you go for tigers mainly. You can see stuff like leopards and sloth bear.
It's up north, though.
It's up north, Rajasthan, yeah.
So you're pushing more towards Tibet.
Yeah, you're not far from the mountainous region.
And it also gets colder up there. I mean, India is crazy hot and humid, but the more north you start going.
Yeah. You get close to zero in January. By April, you got 40, 45 plus. It's mad, the distinction. But when you go on game drive there, you drive past worship sites. As you leave for the gate, for the entrance of this park, you see shrines and candles burning and cloths and statues, and there's a fort right next to this park on the top of a hill called Ranthambore Fort. It's over 1,000 years old, and people still go there. 2 or 3 million people a year visit that fort for prayer. There's 3 temples on top, and it's nuts. So you visit these tigers, you sit watching a tiger, and you can hear this worship, or I don't know what music it is, playing in the background. You as you drive around, you smell incense, and you see it's just this awesome place, and that's a place that really had a profound impact on me, both working there, being on work, but also just as on a personal level, really impacted me.
Another really exciting trip that's coming up, and it's exciting for me because I know you haven't done a reconnaissance trip there yet, so everything's sort of you're flying by the seat of your pants, you're doing a bit of homework on the internet. You want to go to the Congo and see the gorillas.
Congo.
That's going to be crazy, man.
That's whack. So it came about, long story short again, guests 3 guests met me on safari. I was on another safari. These 3 guests saw me there. They had been following me online, and they said, Marlon, we want to go on safari with you, but on one condition. We don't want to go somewhere where people have been. We want to go off the beaten track. We want to go somewhere, and they are well traveled, right? They travel 6 or 7 months of the year. And they said, Marlon, take us somewhere where you haven't been and where we haven't been. And that's how it kind of started. So I did a bit of research, looked at Gabon, looked at Chad, which has got another very cool place, and ended up deciding on this area in Central Africa Republic and the Congo. And it's going to be wild, man.
The crazy thing about the Congo is there's a lot of shit going on there that you've got to try and avoid.
Well, seeing as my guests might be listening, don't be scared. But no, I mean, we've discussed this thing in length, all the way up until taking security with us, like actually somebody armed, and may or may not be there. I cannot confirm nor deny. But yeah, it's got a crazy history, right? A lot of civil stuff, people dying, people being killed, a lot of terrorist activity, abductions, kidnappings, all those kind of things. It's all still a threat at the moment, but more one-sided of the country. So northeast, the southern parts, where we're going to be, it's the owner, it's South African owner run, and they've been there for 10, 11, 12 years, no incidents, no issues. It's right in the corner, like you can't be more in the corner of CAR.
No Ebola.
Hopefully not. So there's an Ebola outbreak at the moment in DRC. So it's like the town where it broke out is 1,600 kilometers away. So it's unlikely. You got the entire Congo forest between us and the town. Very unlikely that'll come our way. But that's part of what's exciting about what I do, Andrew. Is I get to go to places that's a little bit out there. We go to places like next week. I'm leaving for the Kruger, for the Sabi Sands, private game reserves. Uber luxury, aircons, fine dining, perfect vehicles, convenient flight in and out, right? And that's great. But on the other side, I like to also explore a little bit and live that indie kind of life. Coming back with stories. I mean, it's awesome. It's part of the experience. And like I said, it gets you on your seat a little bit, makes you feel a little bit alive, and that's what I love doing. So that's going to be an exciting one.
You got some inspirational animals. Let's call them inspirational animals, or notable animals that from each location. And I mean, you visited lots of different places, and you've been back to the same places many times. What are the animals that have really stood out for you the most? I know that you're constantly taking pictures of Scar.
Yeah.
And Scar is, do you want to just explain who Scar is?
Scar, I mean Scarface or Scar, most famous lion in Africa at the moment, and has been for a few years. Magnificent animal. Apart from his eye, his right eye is damaged above the eye. It's got a little bit of a membrane over the eye, below the eye, so he looks like completely badass.
And he's got a complete scar down the eye through the face.
Exactly. So he looks like the Disney character, and that's what got the name from, obviously. But just besides that, he's big. So he's a really big lion, and then he's got probably the biggest mane on a lion I've ever seen. So it's just perfect that it worked out. He's got a black mane, pitch black, and long hair between his head. He's got this mane that pops up. When there's a bit of wind blowing, you'll see it looks like a shampoo advert. There's just wind blowing through his mane, and then this eye. He's got on his side. He when he was younger, I think he was about 2 or 3 years old, or maybe a little bit older. Him and his brother went cattle hunting, which is obviously frowned upon. And Maasai warriors, which is another thing a lot of people have heard of, saw them, busted them, killed his brother, and speared him. So he had a Maasai spear right through his chest, missed all the vitals, but stuck out the other end. Vets ended up finding him. Well, they got news. Vets found him, tranquilized him, got the spear out, treated him, but basically gave him no hope to survive. And he did. So he's still got, you can see on both ends, you can see the wound, the entry and the exit wound. And I first saw him in about 5 or 6 years ago, and ever since then I was taken by this thing. I'm not a fan of humanizing. I think there's a term for it, giving human attributes or qualities to animals, because I think it makes them too friendly. And but Scar, giving him a name because he's so famous, a lot of people see him. People go to Kenya to see Scarface, and he's just inspiring. He's big. He's mean. the way he interacts. He's got 4 brothers that he hangs out with. He hardly ever hangs out with them. When lionesses walk up to them, he'll give them a slap. He's just, and they love it. Like that. It kind of does something for them because he mates with all of them. So they must enjoy that bad boy vibe. He's a mean character, and I even went as far as getting a tattoo of him on my arm. So one of my photographs, and this tattoo right here is a scar. So done by a guy called Ted in Cape Town.
You've had some crazy experiences with elephants, buffaloes.
Slightly.
Lionesses for me is the favorite one. But let's start with the male bull elephant.
Yeah. Look, I've had a few. One, Mana Pools in particular, which is this place in Zimbabwe. It's on the Zambezi River, so right in northern Zimbabwe. And it's a park where you can get out on foot, right? So it's legal. I must say that because a lot of people think that you just do that everywhere. And you can't just get out of your car and walk up to animals. But in Zimbabwe, in Mana Pools, people have been doing it since the park started, approaching animals on foot. So therefore, the resident animals are a little bit habituated to it. They're used to seeing people, but there's still a lot of the animals that come out of the woodland onto the floodplain that are not used to people. And so we had been there for a few days, stopped for coffee. So typical morning game drive. You go out, do your thing, 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, stop the car, nice shady spot, have a cup of coffee, have something to eat. And so while my guests were busy, just made them coffee. Each one, they were all busy. There was an elephant bull standing about 100 meters from us, big guy.
But the one thing I want to mention before you carry on is that you're a huge believer in getting people out the car.
I love it, yeah.
Simply because when you're in the car, you've got that feeling of safety. When you're out the car, you become aware of all your senses.
Yes.
You get a sort of heightened senses.
Yeah.
And that for you is really important when people experience a trip like that with you.
Exactly. And that's why I love Mana, because you can do that freely. You can do it anywhere. Well, most places allow you to get out, but you need an armed scout, or the ranger's got to get permission, or you need it's a little bit more formal, and the animals don't react that well. Like elephants would run towards you, but you don't get that quality time as you do in Mana. And what I love about it is exactly what you said. It awakens you a little bit. All of a sudden you're smelling things, you're hearing a branch breaking, or a bird calling, or a lion roaring. You're very attuned to what's happening around you. You're seeing, you're feeling, and it makes you feel alive, and it heightens the experience.
Plus, most of your guests are there for photography purposes. Yeah. So, I mean, if you're sitting in the car and you're watching something from a distance, that's great. But your guys, they're on foot. Yeah. Some of them might not have the biggest lenses with the biggest range. Yeah. So you've got to get out the car, and you've actually got to start trekking towards.
Yeah. And you can lie down on the ground. You can move. You can left, right. You can do your thing and get great photographs that way. So I walked up to this a little bit, maybe halfway, 20 or 30 meters from the car, maybe a little bit further, just to photograph this elephant bull. So he was standing under the tree doing his thing. Beautiful. My guests were photographing from the car. I just wanted to get a little bit closer, and so as I we parked just off road, and as I got to the edge of the road, I stopped there and shot him a little bit. And then he stopped what he was doing. I knew he was watching me. They're very subtle, so you gotta understand how they behave. And elephant behavior you gotta know them well. You gotta be able to tell what they're doing, and it's not very obvious. So it might be a pause, not even looking in your direction, but just that pause, and the way he pauses and the way he does it tells me that he's probably seen me. He knows that I'm here. So he did that, and he knew I was there. So he stopped what he was doing, turned towards me, and started walking towards me, which in Mana Pool, it's pretty normal, right? So you interact with Ellies often. And so he kept coming. And
you're thinking to yourself at this time, this is pretty normal.
I'm photographing, and I've got a fixed 400 mm lens in my hand, right? So I wasn't planning to shoot this thing up close. I was trying to get within a 400 mm kind of distance of him. So I didn't want to stand at his feet or engage him or upset him or anything. I just wanted to get a few shots. And so I'm standing there, and he's coming. I'm shooting a little bit, and then I stop because now he's a little bit too close. So eventually he gets to the other side of the road, and typically Mana bulls come, walk, and stop and look at you and then leave. And this bloody bugger decided that he didn't want to stop. And again, elephant psychology, they love to stay behind an obstruction or a structure. So if it's a bush or a log or a road,
you said even if there's a road in the way, sometimes it makes them pause.
It's a visual thing, yeah. And so usually they'll stop, or at the edge of the road they'll stop, look at you, and then decide what to do. And so that's what I was bargaining on. You got to, it's all a game of odds, and 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 they're never predictable. So I just figured there's a good chance he's going to stop. So I'll just stay where I am. And you also have guests looking at you, right? So, Marlon, the ranger, and then these guests are looking, and they've got their full confidence in you. And here's this Ellie bull walking up towards me, now turn and come back. It doesn't look that cool.
And your guests are sitting in the car. They're thinking to themselves, "It's Marlon. He knows what he's doing. He's done this 100 times."
They're just walking around there. But exactly that. And so part of me was, I'm going to stay there because I'm going to look crap if I walk back, which was a stupid call at the time because I should have probably walked to the car when I had a chance. Anyway, so he gets to the road and he doesn't stop. So he keeps walking. He walks onto the road. And now I'm like, well, it's a bit of a problem because now I'm on the road and he's on the very same road. And he stopped only when I started talking to him. So I raised my voice a bit and told him, hey, easy, big guy. And so he stops. And now he's just looking at me, right? And he's head up a little bit. Obviously, the voice would caught him a bit by surprise. Again, now what's going through my head is with elephants, you need to leave something for later. Or a charging animal, you can't give it your all. So if you're in a fight and you're trying to scare something and you put up this massive show, shoot a few guns in there, do your thing, and that doesn't work, and he still keeps coming, what do you do then, right? So I got to keep this in mind always with an elephant charge. So I talk to him and it works. He stops. But he's a bull in his late 20s, so he's at that age where he's confrontational. He wants to challenge, he wants to take you on and show you his boss. And now I'm too close to him to back up. I can't go back. If I move back, he's going to give me a hard time, and I'm going to look like an idiot in front of my guests. And now I'm standing there. So now he's stopped, and he keeps coming a little bit more. So I kick sand at him on the sand, and he stops again, and he looks at me. But now I can see the mood's changing. I can see it's becoming a problem. And the third time he came a little bit too excitedly, 6-7 meters from me, and he's coming, putting that head down a bit, and I shout and I smack on my ledge, and he stops again. And then the fourth time he came again, but now I could see this was not going the way that I wanted it to go. And when you see the photograph, it'll make sense how close I was to this damn thing. Nothing around me, no tree to climb, no mound to get behind, nada. I had a lens, a big lens. So I stepped as he came at me. The only thing I could think of is I can't run because he's going to run over me. I'm going to die. And the only thing I could do is be scarier than him. I have to intimidate this 5,000 kilo elephant. So I run at him, take a step forward, almost throw my lens at him. I swing my lens at his head. Now he's 3-4 meters from me. And that movement of the lens sends him back a few meters. And then my local guide walked up as well. He was watching from the sideline for some other reason. And he joined me. And just his presence made sure that the bull backed up, and that was a near-death experience. It was scary, man.
Tell us the story about walking back from the lodge one night and almost stepping over a fully grown male buffalo.
So before I do that, I got to tell you about a buffalo. So a lot of people think, why the fuss about a buffalo?
You told me
it's like a black cow. Like, why even bother with it?
When I asked you what the most dangerous animal you've probably ever come across is, I was actually surprised to know that you said it was a buffalo.
Absolutely, man. You ask any tracker, any person who spends a lot of time walking in the field, and they'll tell you there's a black rhino, elephant cows, but a buffalo bull, or Dagga boy as we call them, not good news. So here I was. I just started working at Singita. I'd been there a few months, fresh back off the US, cool kid on the block, and I haven't really been humbled out in the bush yet. Now, let me tell you, you can think you can be the coolest person, you can be whoever you are, but animals have a way of humbling you and bringing you down to earth very quickly. That's just how it works out there. You're not the strongest cat when you're out in the bush, that's for sure. So there I was walking back. So picture this. Where I stayed, I was a skivvy. I started out there. They didn't have proper accommodation for me and a mate of mine, James and Scott. So we stayed out in the bushes, and Benji, the four of us. There were 4 Wendy houses, literally a Wendy house. That's where I stayed in for 6 months, tiny Wendy house. And I had to walk from the lodge at night, from the lodge all the way through the staff area, which was a little bit more protected, through the maintenance area, through the car park, down a little road, onto the soccer field, across the soccer field, through a few rocks and a little winding road, and then get to the Wendy houses. So it's probably from the last form of a light, which is the maintenance area, probably 300 meters, 400 meters to walk. So it's a long way in the dark. So my problem was I left my flashlight. I came to the lodge during the light time, left my flash at home. So I had an iPod. I've been listening to music. Though. Okay, so like if you imagine remember the little iPods, the long, thin one that came out, that I didn't have a light on, just the screen. So I'd put the screen on, and that was my light. So there I was with my iPod. As soon as I left the cars, iPod on and walking. And it's raining. Okay, it's a little bit of rain, pitch black darkness. And as you start going towards the soccer field, over the soccer field, I was getting a little bit, I was aware of what's happening around me. I was a little bit nervous. The night before, we had the four of us walked back and we saw a hippo. So one guy had a flashlight on the hippo, and one of the guys decided it would be a clever idea to, not that I condone this, we were very young, we threw a rock towards the hippo just to chase it away. Hippo ran at us. Guy with the light ran away. Guess what we did? So we were at the light. He ran for his life, and we were left in the bloody darkness. I think he started running before the rock left somebody's hand. I remember there being a trailer, like a little a tractor trailer next to us, and two of us jumped on that thing, and I smashed my shins. But the hippo just ran at us. We don't know where he went. It was dark, but we just knew we had to get out. So that was in my memory as well. So I was walking over the soccer field, walking to my Wendy house, and all of a sudden, as I got into this little trail, 50 meters from my Wendy house, I heard something move, like something rustling, and I stopped, put the light on my leg, and I'm standing there, like pitch black dark, and you hear the little bit of rain on the leaves around me, and I'm listening, because I knew I heard something.
Plus, when you've had a little bit of a light in your eye, you declimatize your sight to what's going on around you. So by taking the light from the iPod, sort of putting it against you, you're hoping that your eyes are going to start adapting to all the darkness again. Yes. You're going to be able to see what's going on.
Well, that, and I figured if it was a lion, it had a honing beacon, so the light, so it could just lion tackle me much easier. Not that they can't see at night, but at that time you think of crazy things. So I kill the light, and it's cloudy, right? So it's dark, and I can't see anything, and I'm standing there like an idiot, I'm waiting for the moment of impact, and I can see my Wendy house off to the left, and I figured I'm going to run. I was going to run for it. Like, that's what I'm going to do. It's worked before. I'm going to sprint. I know it's a little bit to the forward and then left, and I'm at my Wendy house. But lions chase running things, right? So I also didn't want to be chased.
Not a great idea.
Yeah, so I figured I'm not dead yet. Whatever moved is just watching me and hasn't attacked me. If I run, it's probably going to attack me. So I was like, stuff this. I'm just going to walk slowly. So I bring my iPod back up, touch the little wheel in the middle, and as I took a step, Andrew, I promise you, I wish I could bring this memory back and show you how close that buffalo was. But the whole time, I'd been standing there for half a minute. There was a buffalo, an adult big dugger boy, as big as they get. It was right in front of me. So as I stepped forward, the boss, or this top part of his horn, almost touched my shins as he stood up. So they stand up, they put their bum up first, and then, have you seen a cow stand up? Like, backside goes up, and then he comes up to the front. All I remember is that head going down to stand up. And I remember, and I promise you, vividly, I remember the iPod's light illuminated the water on the horns. So I could literally see the water lit. That's how close it was. Now, iPod light, that thing wasn't bright. So it was close. But I started running before that I was already running. Like, as that head came up, I was gone. I don't know if you remember those little toys where you can wind it up and you put it down and it like runs. Yeah. But it usually starts running before you put it down because you're winding it. And that was my legs. My legs just started running. Luckily, I turned my head, because if I didn't turn my head, I would have gone the way that I was looking, which was into him. And yeah, so I remember him standing up, and I turned and I just ran in the dark. Somehow, I remember jumping over a rock. I don't know how I saw it, but there's a rocky patch. Jumping over one or two rocks, across the soccer field, through the maintenance, through the car park, into the staff village, to a mate's door, like banging on his door. Dude, I almost got killed by a buffalo. Freaking out. And got a staff porter to drive me back. And I went to the Wendy house, got my flashlight. The buffalo was still standing there. Didn't even chase me.
I mean,
stood there.
The reality is, if you did startle him, which I don't think he was startled, I think you just got the fright between the two of you. But if you did startle him, he could have immediately stood up and just sort of taken his horns straight forward into you.
I would have been dead. Luckily, he didn't chase me. That thing, they kill you, man. They are bad news.
And there's no even warning signs. That's why you, in particular, say that the buffalo is one of the most dangerous, because there's no warning signs. And Ellie might, give a bit of a scratch, and he might mock charge.
Nothing. They just come right at you, and they kill you till you die, and they kill you more. They just keep killing you, man. It's a horrible animal.
Mauling your dead corpse on the floor.
Pretty much, throwing it up into the air and like, no, it's a horrible animal.
Like a kid's toy.
So, yeah, that was. I remembered well because I was young, just back into the bush again, and buffalo. Any guy with a story of a buffalo, if you have a buffalo story and you come out alive and unscathed, pretty damn lucky. Not gonna lie.
And then you've got another really good one where you were tracking lions, or you were tracking prints in a riverbed. And you came across 3 lionesses that decided that they didn't like you being there.
No. It was a pride that we'd known pretty well. We knew they had cubs. But how it works, guests come and stay for 2-3 days. You got to show them these lions. And they're not always on the road where you drive. So how it works is we have worked in tracking teams. And it's not popular all over Africa, but Southern Africa, especially Zimbabwe, some places. But South Africa, if you go on safari, you're normally going to have a tracker sitting up front, and he looks for footprints. So there I was driving along, and he says, hey, stop, and we stop, and there's lion tracks. The pride had been there. Close to camp, 10 minutes from camp. And so we jump out, we look at the tracks. The 2 of us assess the tracks. You look how fresh it is. How long ago do we think they walked there? It was a morning game drive, and the tracks were definitely from that morning, maybe not that long ago. And then what I like to do as well is I walk with my tracker for a bit. The 2 of us, I have the rifle at that stage. We walk, we get an idea of where they're going, a general direction. Lions are creatures of habit, so they know where they're going. They're not going to walk north and then all of a sudden turn and go south and then go east. So they always have an idea of where they're going. And so we walk, we get a general idea. And
when you're tracking animals, you don't exactly want to find them by surprise. You'd like to sort of have a little bit of distance between you where you can predict where they might be.
Exactly. Or you don't want to startle them.
And that's not always the case.
It's nice to. It's not, because you don't know what it's going to be like. And so we walk, and we probably did a couple of 100 meters from the car, still in view of our guests. And we walked up into a little rise, and as we got onto the rise, there were these damn lions. And the 3 mothers immediately, they must have heard us, but they weren't quite sure what was coming their way because it was a little bit rocky. So I'm sure they heard us. And as our heads popped up, we didn't see them immediately. And the next moment, we just hear this boom, and these 3 lions up. 1 lioness immediately came at us, and that just inspired these women power, girl power, and they just came. So you had this 1 lioness spearheading towards us, probably 25, 30 meters away, and then the other 2 next to her. And then she stopped, and this other one went past, and she stopped, and this one kept going. And so they one would go further than the other, and the other would keep coming, but they're growling, and those tails are whipping.
Are they running, or are they rather doing that stealth walk, where they put the nose down and they're coming?
First one ran and slowed down, and the other ones ran past, and then they would slow down and keep coming, and then slow down. And eventually, so we were shouting when I saw this is not going to go down well. Chambered around into my rifle, shouldered the rifle, and just kept screaming. My tracker as well, slapping his hands and yeah, footsack. And eventually they stopped. So they stopped. I mean, I think the distance was less than 5 meters. So it was so close. When that 1 lioness slammed on the brakes, stones and pebbles smacked into my shins and onto my boots and my tracker. So picture that. It's freaking close, right? So we're standing there, and these lions, now she's stopped and she's looking at us. But in all these charges that I've had, a lot of them, they don't make direct eye contact the whole time. So they look around them, the tail's going there. They are as angry as you can imagine, right? Growling, you're standing there, rifle is ready. Not that I have never had to shoot anything, because I try to stay out of those situations as much as I can. But I mean, you have to be ready, right? But at that point, when things are calm, you don't freak out too much. You don't scream. Just let it calm down. Let them settle. But when they look at you, so they'll look around, and then they look straight at you. You get this yellow eye with this that iris is so small there, like the pupil. It's tiny little black pupil, big eye, big yellow. That's an angry lion, right? And she looks at you like this and makes eye contact.
And at that moment in time, look, you've got to be denying every human instinct in you, which is just to run.
Andrew, you don't have time. I promise you, you won't believe it, man. I have to take you and get you charged by a lion.
I'm looking forward. I'm looking forward to that.
I'm going to hook this up. I'm going to get you out there. We can put it on the show. Get you charged by a lion.
Don't get me charged by a buffalo, please. I'm not interested in buffaloes.
But I promise, it's an experience you can't explain. It feels longer, but it's seconds, right? That whole charge sequence must have been 4 or 5 seconds. stopping, looking at me another few seconds, and she then backed off a bit, turned and walked away. Stopped and looked at us, walked away, stopped and looked at us, walked away. And then by that time the cubs had run. And they just walked away. And they just kept looking at us, and we got opportunity to backtrack. Never turn, so you always walk a little bit, take a couple of steps, step, and eventually we were out of it.
So that incident worked out perfectly because you stood your ground,
Yes.
you made a lot of audio sound, you shouted.
Yes.
What is the opposite? What is the sure way of getting yourself killed in that situation?
Look, in a normal situation, you do exactly what I did. That's the ideal. If you turn and run when they charge at you, I can't guarantee that they are going to have a go at you. But when lions hunt and prey see them, prey will run away. If lions charge, they run. That's what they used to. That's what they instinctively do, is they chase a moving object. Now, we're not natural prey to a lion. So when she charged at us, it's not like she's charging at an impala or a zebra. She knew what we were. They've got an instinctive fear of people, and that's what causes that reaction. We surprised them. We were too close for her and her cubs. Maybe if she didn't have the cubs, it would have been a lot better. She would have looked at us, growled, but stood her ground. But because she had the cubs and we were a little close and all of a sudden appeared, it's all these factors that just came into play that caused that reaction. But I mean, if you run, there's a good chance you're going to get eaten. There's a chance that the charge might be worse. You just do not run. That's the most important thing. If you remember anything, don't run. You can't climb a tree from a lion. If they want to get you, they can climb much better, much faster than what we can. And then the other thing is, if cubs are bad news, any mother and a baby, we all know, like, just, your wife or anyone like, and you as a parent will do anything for your cubs, and the same with them, but except they equipped with teeth and fangs and all sorts of stuff. Not good. And the other thing is injured animals, sick animals, old animals. You got to be careful. They react differently. So there you might get a charge where they don't stop. An injured animal might feel so threatened that they have to, fight or flight, and they just choose they're going to take you down. So those are anomalies. But for the most part, just don't run. Not that you're going to encounter lions out here, but if ever you find yourself in a place where you have a lion or something like that, do not run. Except if it's a buffalo. So when I walk you into a buffalo,
If it's a buffalo, run like hell.
All run.
Run like hell.
Just don't be the slowest. Run fast. Or climb.
Let's talk a bit about your social media. You've got a massive following on Instagram. When I say massive, you're almost at 100,000 followers.
Yeah.
As I mentioned before, you've got some of the best wildlife photography I've ever seen. Second to the probably the top guys that do the National Geographics, and hide out in the wilderness for weeks just to get that one shot.
Yeah.
But I've noticed of late, you're getting a ton of interaction. And especially when you guys post pictures of yourselves being at a kill or something like that, you've got a lot of these armchair conservationists that are sitting there behind their keyboards going, oh, well, why didn't you rescue the animal?
Yes, keyboard warrior typing away.
A lot of people don't understand, it's the way of the wild, and it's not something that you should be controlling or intervening with, But that kind of interaction, though, you get a ton of hate coming along with the love that you get on the posts as well.
I do.
What do you think about it when you see it?
Look, Andrew, my social is a platform for people to get to know me as a person, to get to know what I do for a living, and also I want to ideally attract people to come on safari with me, because it's a business. I do this for a living. But every now and again, I'll put up content. Like, one favorite is there's a crocodile swallowing a zebra head, which is fairly vivid. I've shared it a few times, just to ruffle a few feathers. But that's pretty vivid, right? And people look at that and they find it appalling. Some people love it, some people hate it. So it's the kind of image that just it sparks something in people, and it's usually extreme. They either really dig it or they just don't like you for it at all. Another great one is hyenas devouring animals. Hyenas typically, if they have to kill something, they eat it when it's alive. So you get this really thick red blood that covers their face. And on Instagram, when you see that, it gets people's attention. Recently, I posted actually same destination, lions trying to kill an elephant. Now again, I love posting these things because posting a lion portrait, everyone's doing it, and you don't get noticed. It's the same thing over and over, and it's great. I do post them, but every now and again, if you can post something that gets people a little bit, then
A little bit edgy.
yeah, it's all about emotion, right? Again, you have a platform, you have your phone. I think we all do that. You just nowadays, a lot of the content is just mundane, and I just end up scrolling. So it takes something to stop somebody, then still have them like the photograph and leave a comment. And if I can get somebody to engage on a post that I put up, that's awesome, right? Like that's the goal at the end of the day. And a recent one, I didn't expect a backlash like that, but it's been one of the funnest posts that I've done. Was we were in Wangi in Zimbabwe, and we got reports of an elephant that died during the night, just natural causes, just fell down next to the waterhole and died. When we got there, we looked at, there was no signs of struggle. Often if an animal is dying painfully, you can see the marks on the ground where the legs were kicking, nothing. This thing he just died. Not sure how.
So it was open season for vultures, hyenas, lions, whatever was going to come in and eat the animal.
Yes, so this whole thing, he was there the night before. The next day, the whole day, it lay there. And I was bargaining on lions, finding this thing. There were lions not too far away. True as anything. Next morning we get there and the whole pride's there, right? So busy feeding on this elephant. Thick skin, so they're feeding around the head, the eyes, the anus, the bum, nice soft skin. And then a herd arrives, another herd of elephants. They're just coming in from outside for a drink because it's right next to the camp waterhole. So you got the camp in the back, you got these elephants drinking, you got these lions. We'd been with them for a couple of hours at this point, and very happy guests, right? Not because it's anything other than they've gotten sick images. Yeah, they are in front of their own camp where they're staying. They've got lions eating an elephant, and they took very good wildlife photographs. And so I take a photograph of my guest, David Whelan, smiling because he's stoked. So he's just got the shots of his life, and he's been on safari for 30 days. This is like the second last day of safari, and he's just knocked it out of the park. Put up this picture of Dave smiling. Oh my goodness.
You're so heartless.
Hundreds of comments come in.
How can you sit there and watch this
People
and smile?
All sorts. One guy called me an asshole. The other guy, there's a few things that just people just freaking out, insensitive.
I saw the one person goes like, I've been following you for a long time, Marlon, and now I've just lost all respect for you for posting this photo.
Yes.
I thought that was pathetic.
The guy says, that same guy in the same sentence says, I've met your partner Jerry in New York presenting. He seemed like a great guy, but you on the other end just seemed like a total ass. I'm like, all right, great, buddy. Anyway, so like I got all these comments, right? People like saying, and that's the power of a picture. They just interpret that as Dave is smiling because the elephant's dead, and he's so happy that this elephant died, and they assume the family of elephants coming to drink in the back was part of this poor elephant that just died, and they mourning, and they're calling out for him to wake up because the trunk's up because they can smell the lions and they're scared of lions, right? Not because they're interacting with the dead elephant. And it's just this cool picture, which I still love, and I just let the comments roll, man. And the cool thing about Instagram is other people are scared to share what they feel. And so people were lambasting these haters as well. And I have comment threads of like 30 comments under one comment, just people having a go at each other, swearing at each other, just calling each other's names, like, why are you so sensitive? I think the one guy said, because there's quite a few girls that commented on it, and the one comment went something along the lines of, get over yourself, you stupid white-haired broads or blonde broads or something. And then he said, not everything can survive off dick and lettuce. Some animals have to eat. Not everyone can survive like you guys.
And the one guy that I loved, the one comment that I really enjoyed was, "Okay, lady, no problem. We'll just stop feeding all the lions in the country."
Did you see that comment? Like, how funny is that? Yeah, so like, and it's engaging posts. I love it. It's cool, and it gets people talking. It activates your feed a little bit. It's But the problem with these people, it's like you said, they've never been on safari. They don't know a clue. They got 99% of them never seen this. This is Africa. I share what I see.
Half the time, a lot of the people don't even read the caption.
No,
so that they actually
really
get
don't.
some kind of an understanding as to how the picture was established.
They really don't.
They just see it, they get upset, and they just start firing.
Start commenting, man. And, I love, a lot of people are sensitive, so I have a lot of friends and colleagues, some guys at Wild Eye, well, the company, that don't like to share vivid graphic pictures. I love it, man. Like, I'm like, this is what I do.
It's real.
I photograph.
It's real.
I see death. I see struggles. I see animals dying. I see, I posted pictures not so long ago of a poor lion cub that got mauled by another male lion, back broken. He was looking, we encountered him on foot. He got a fright. He had these big wide eyes, but it was just this real moment. So I share it, but I share it in context, right? So I write what happened. But people then realize, like, Africa is not just these beautiful, like, elephants and, you know, little impala babies and lion cubs. Africa is Africa. This is a real place. So is Pantanal, like the animals from Pantanal, injured animals. You know, the Mara, wildebeest running through the river. Hundreds die at a time. And we get people that say, why don't you build a bridge so they can cross nicely? You know, why do they have to die? Why do we let these animals die? We should build a bridge so they can get safely from one side to the other side. Like, are you joking?
We'll just stop feeding the crocodile population.
Exactly. And screw up the whole entire thing that's been happening for hundreds of years. And let's build all of these bridges and let them cross. Like, a bizarre idea. So I love being able to bring Africa to you the way it is, the way it should be, raw and uncut, like you know.
Thank you.
Raw and uncut.
Raw and uncut.
That's all except for your beard. It's not cut. But
Where's the future? Where are you off to next? And obviously the Congo is a big step for the business.
yeah.
Getting regular visits to the Congo, that's going to be a great big step for the company. But the future for you and tours and more countries you want to be able to take people to?
Always, man. I mean, our future, I think in today's world, it's difficult to plan anything beyond 5 years with how social, changes in social affects how we do our business, political instability. There's so many things that factor in. So I think, for us in the next 5 years, we're always looking to expand. We're different in the sense, a lot of safari companies and people who do what we do, it's based around a single player. So it'll be the person, the key player, and he does the safaris, So it's often a one-man show, or maybe you'll have a couple of guys that assist him, but it's always about Marlon to Toit. What we do differently is we building, like, I don't want to use the word agency, but something like a guide agency, or where we can have a lot of guys working with us, right? So at the moment we're a team of eight guides in total. And we travel all over. So as I speak, we've got 2 guys in the Mara, 2 guys in Madikwe, 1 guy leaving for the Mara in 3 days. I've just come back from the Pantanal. So we got guys in the field as I sit here the whole time. And so it's a sustainable business model. If I was running my tours under my name only, I'd have to work for the rest of my life in order to bring in money, because my time in the field is money. But the exciting thing is what we're building is something different. There's nothing like it. So we're building an agency of guides. So hopefully 15, 20 guides in the next few years, a lot more destinations. We're spearheading the whole time. I leave Patagonia is a new one coming up, Sri Lanka, Borneo is one we've just visited.
Patagonia is a crazy place, man.
I'm working on the itinerary at the moment, and it's gonna be beyond words, man. You walk up to mountain lions and in the place called Torres del Paine, this really cool park, massive landscapes. So there's always new places, new destinations. Very, very exciting, Andrew, and look forward to seeing where it can go to. It's all new. There's no handbook,
Well, thanks so much for coming on the show, man. We really appreciated having you here. And the fact that we got you in is a miracle, because you're so tightly packed up with tours.
Yeah.
And we can't wait to get you back on for you to share more stories. And we look forward to it. And obviously we wish you all the best with your future tours. Try not to get mauled. Try not to get dragged into the...
kidnapped.
Yeah, try not to get kidnapped and held up for ransom.
Yeah, it's a wild place out there, man.
There's a couple of us here that might have to put up some money so we can get you back from the Congo if that happens.
If you see a call coming from a strange foreign country, just please answer. Don't let me go to voicemail.
We'll answer.
Might be urgent. No, but I got to thank you as well from my side for having me on here. It's a very exciting show. So privileged to be a part of the early stages, and I've no doubt that it's going to go big places.
Thanks so much, man. It's been great to have you, and we're definitely going to put you back on.
Thanks, Andrew. It means a lot, man. Thank you so much.